If you're building your ABA company and you're tired of guessing, this is for you. We built the EBCBA blueprint to give you real structure, systems, and support without the fluff. Details are in the description. Welcome, everybody. As usual, we have a highly valued speaker today for our live stream. And if you're watching this recording, be sure to go back and watch the other recordings. ASP-RCM has done, this is their fourth live stream with us. Aparna's done two, and Stacy's doing her second one now. And we really love getting the information directly from the source, the professionals that are handling these things, that are really zoomed in on that small part of our business that is a huge part of our business, right? Those little operations that are happening in the background that can have a major effect on our business as a whole. So today, what Stacy's going to talk about is the power of quarterly payment analysis, like paying attention, staying on this every quarter, and our quarterly duties, staying on top of those, making sure that we have our self audits done for security, for your clinical stuff, like making sure that you're doing this stuff on a quarterly basis. And this is one of those things that needs to be in your calendar, where you're going back and making sure that you don't have any, as Stacy's put it here, revenue leakage. Like the last thing that we is money just leaking out for no reason. So once again, Stacy Calvaruso, VP of Sales and Client Delivery for ASP-RCM, is gracing us with her presence and her expertise today. Thank you again, Stacy. Take it away.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate the introduction. It's always great to be able to share our information and knowledge and hopefully improve something for someone else. All of us learn from other people. We learn because people wrote it in a book. We learn because someone gave a webinar or a seminar or brought a topic to us. We learn for so many reasons. That's what we need to do, is we need to pay it forward. We need to share the knowledge, etc. And so today we're going to talk about revenue leakage and how you can do analysis to try and prevent any type of revenue leakage in your organization. I'm a revenue cycle management guru. I love AR. I love fighting for the dollars for organizations and making sure that my organizations are well equipped and understand what they should be looking for. So we've got 4 things that we really are going to hone in today. Identify that revenue leakage, monitor payer performance. You're going to be surprised at some of the things that happen. We're going to look at some real world examples, and then I've got 3 case studies from 3 different payers to share with you. So we only have an hour, and I packed in a lot of information. One of the things I really want to do is just set the tone. So I'm glad that you decided to join us today. What we really want to highlight are those 3 things very specifically. Sorry, my mouse went a little crazy on me there, but really kind of honing in on those 3 important things specific to maximizing reimbursement, preventing revenue loss. Payers don't always get it right. They are learning to use technology just as we are learning to use technology. They have a lot more money to spend on technology, just we don't have money to spend on technology. So there's a huge learning curve that is going on with payers right now related to technology and how the utilization of their technology is causing more of an administrative burden to providers all across the U.S. and in other countries as well. We want to make sure that we're evaluating that and understanding that underpayments, incorrect reimbursement, and claim processing errors happen all the time. And so you want to be able to prevent that by being aware of how to identify it. So that brings us to that detect and resolve the systemic payer issues. So payment discrepancies are sometimes they're just one-time errors, but they're also patterns. If you know what you're looking for, you can look for the pattern and see what is going on. Whether it's an ongoing downcoding issue, because there's not that many codes in ABA services. Like I work for hospitals and medical clinics all over the United States, and there are a lot more codes in my hospital environment than I have in my ABA environment, but I still see the same issue. I still see consistent downcoding Many times it's related to a system error, but it's still an error and it still costs money. And if you're not identifying it ahead of time or within the right amount of time, then you lose out. In the last webinar that I did for you guys, I talked about denials and timely filing, timely appeals, and what that looked like. And I talked about the fact that when you accept a payment from a payer, if you have a contract with a payer, if you have an agreement with it, there's a time limit in appeal a payment. So if you don't appeal that payment within 60 days, generally you have accepted the terms of that payment. So you need to make sure in a contract that you sign that you look for that. So systemic payer issues and staying on top of it is really important. Analyzing payment trends and pinpointing payer-specific issues help you resolve things faster, and that way you don't lose money. And then the last thing is strengthening financial stability and compliance. We want to make sure that in ABA clinics, it's not just about seeing patients, it's about making sure you get paid for the services you provide. Payment analysis protects your revenue stream, but also protects long-term stability and ensures that you are compliant. Make sure that you safeguard your payer contracts, you reduce risk of audits, recoupments, and clawbacks. So if you don't know what the word clawbacks means, we'll talk about that in just a few minutes. That's setting the tone for what we're going to be talking about today. So let's talk about accurate reimbursement. Managed care payers do often underpay or incorrectly reimburse claims. Now, there's a difference between a contracted rate and an actual payment. Knowing what you're supposed to be paid, which is your allowed amount, and the actual payment. Making sure that you read your explanation of benefits and that you're looking at what your allowed amount is, and that allowed amount is what you agreed to with any payer, or it is the same as what the published fee schedule is. And you have to watch that closely. So when I say published fee schedule, I mean, if you have an agreement and they say in the agreement that it is based on 2024's Blue Cross fee schedule. Okay, it's fine. So take your codes and go look up what is that fee schedule rate. That's what's considered your contracted rate. So every year, those fee schedules can adjust. They can go up and they can go down. If that fee schedule is based off of CMS's rates, so you may have heard that CMS will lower rates every year, which means Medicare, Medicaid, but they will lower rates some years, and some years you get a rate hike, and sometimes they change it. Sometimes the managed care payers say, okay, that is how we're going to pay. We're going to set our contracted rates based off of the CMS fee schedule. So if the CMS fee schedule changes, you need to make sure that your contracted rates are being changed as well. Because if you don't, then you can be losing money. So you have to make sure that they're doing what they're supposed to do, because they're not going to tell you that they're not paying you the correct rate. They're not going to admit that. They're just going to slowly correct it later, and you'll see it. In many instances, I've seen that happen. So payment analysis does help ensure that you receive your full reimbursement of services rendered, and that you're making sure of the stability of your organization. You've got a clean, stable cash flow. It's a long time before you start getting paid. Once you start doing your analysis, your assessments on patients, and you're able to build that first full set of services to patients. So make sure that they're getting paid what you should be paid for those services. So let's look at the trends and the underpayments and denials. So typically, systemically underpayments of 97153 and 55. You've probably experienced a case study a little bit later talking about it and have some information about it. But you can look at those two codes, and you should always be watching those codes. So looking at the denials and the recoupments can also be very helpful because it can tell you whether or not each payer is wanting specific modifiers, if their author system is not updating and transferring from the authorization system to the payment or the billing system, then there may be a problem. So we recently had a couple of our clients in a particular state go through this situation where for a payer, their authorizations did not cross over to the billing system. So when the claims came through, the billing system would say they do not have an authorization and they would deny the claim. And we had to continuously rebill the claim with an appeal letter. And it was a large administrative burden. At first, it was like one claim here, one claim here, one claim here. But when we looked at our denials and our payments, we identified, hey, wait, this is a pattern. This is a trend with this payer for the last 60 days. We got in touch with them, made them evaluate their system, and they fixed it finally. It took almost 120 days for that to get fixed. And during that 120 days, we had to consistently correct claims and fight for the payments, which cost us extra money that we should not have had to been burdened with. Nobody should be burdened with the expense of rebilling claims, appealing claims when it's due to a systemic error. So making sure that you identify those trends and proactively address those issues with the payers is really important for all of us. Improving your cash flow and your financial stability. So just like I just talked about, delayed or reduced payments, they do create cash flow shortages. If you're paying your employee by the hour to fix claims, rebill claims, appeal claims due to a problem from a payer, that means that all of those claims are not getting paid regularly. And the new things that are coming in, they're being stalled because you have this new work, or you're paying overtime for this person to do this, or extra money for this to happen. So you're diluting your cash because of this. And so that hurts you financially. So that's why we say doing regular payment analysis and payer analysis on these items will help you ensure that you've allocated all of your resources effectively and that you're protecting your organization's financial stability. Strengthening contract negotiations with the payers. So once you've identified that you have issues with payers, talk to them about it. If you see that your organization is providing these items consistently and they are having a problem processing your claims, you need to have those discussions with them. But you also need to make sure that you are leveraging that information during your contract renegotiations. If you're the only provider or group that is able to serve a specific area and you've had to fight with them for underpayments for the last year, etc. When you go and want to renegotiate your contract, you need to bring all of that to the table as part of your renegotiation discussion. And you need to talk about the fact that if your organization were to stop taking this payer, how that would impact the kids in that area and how it would impact the community and their insured population. So make sure that you're using all of that when you work on contract renegotiations and or looking for better processes with the payers and better communication and better reimbursement rates with the payers. So don't minimize the impact that they have from your denials, from your underpayments, from anything that happens. Make sure you utilize the data and that you put that to good work for you in your organization as you walk through any type of contract renegotiations, etc. So errors such as incorrect billing rates, missing units, duplicate claims definitely result in significant revenue loss. Making sure that it's not a self-inflicted issue. So when I talk about billing rates, missing units, duplicate denials, things like that, sometimes it is a payer issue, but sometimes it can also be our issue. So make sure that your shop, so to speak, that your billing process is clean and that you've looked at any step that you have inside your office before you evaluate or go to the payer and say, hey, you did this wrong. It goes a long way. If you're constantly crying wolf to the payer and saying, hey, you processed my claim wrong, then you're not going to have as much leverage as you need when you truly do have issues with them processing your claim job. So you have to make sure you really understand the process and the billing of your claims and that you have done it correctly so that you don't mistakenly go to the payer and accuse them of not processing things correctly. But if you see that there are errors and that it is causing financial problems, make sure that you're looking at it and that you're taking care to fix any of those errors. So this is on the internal side in confirming that you have captured all your billable hours and that your rates are set up correctly, that you're billing into the correct provider. A lot of times we have organizations that will ask us to help them with problems that they're having with payers, and it's not necessarily a payer problem. It's a human problem, and it's an honest mistake. It's an honest error. It's just a misunderstanding on the workflow or the process, and somebody just needed a little extra training. So this is just my word of caution, is just to make sure that you understand internally what that workflow should look like. And even if you have to just put it on a little whiteboard or get one of those large stickies from Home Depot, put it on the board and draw it out, sometimes that visual will just make a big difference in understanding how it all works for yourself. So enhancing compliance and reducing audit risks, when you understand your workflow and you've confirmed that your organization is doing things the correct way and that the payer is possibly downcoding something, or their authorizations aren't transferring over, or they're just not paying correctly, then what you want to do is you want to talk about it. You want to ensure that you are bringing it to them. Okay. However, you also want to make sure that you don't have a compliance risk. That's why I talk about making sure that you know what's going on in your office, because if you send in incorrect claims, then you are more subject to an audit. And managed care payers and Medicaid vendors are really starting to get hot and heavy on auditing and evaluating ABA claims. And the reason being is because it's more prevalent. More money was allocated for ABA services in the last 3 to 5 years. So they're just following the money trail and they're evaluating whether or not these were valid services, invalid services. There has been a lot of corruption out there with organizations billing things incorrect. And so unfortunately has made it a topic of discussion internally with the payers that they need to take a certain percent of these types of claims and they need to audit and review them. Anybody that had such a denial score of 12% or more, and this is something that I heard from a payer, that if they had a denials percent on a specific code, 12 period. So just understand that making sure that you're doing things will help reduce audit risk. But again, underpayments and payment inconsistencies do indicate a compliance risk possibly, but it could be a compliance risk on their side, on the payer side. So knowing what has been paid correctly, what has not been paid correctly is important. And that's why we really highly recommend a couple of steps to you. And I do have a handout that you'll get, and I'm going to pop this up really quick just to show you what that is. So this right here, and I'm hoping that you guys can see, this is an Excel spreadsheet that I have for you. So this is just a payment analysis schedule. So there are things that you should be looking at on a daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, and annual basis. You can't do it on a daily basis. Do it on a weekly basis. It's important that you keep track of this. If not, do it on a monthly basis, but by all means, you must do it on a quarterly basis. Okay. So I did break it down for you. And this is pretty common sense. These are things that you should definitely be doing anyway. So reconciling your payments, your daily payments with expected payments, any claim rejections or denials, and looking for missing remittances or zero pays. What was posted versus what was expected? If the allowed amount is supposed to be $100 and the payment that you got was $65, where's the variance? Is that a patient portion? Okay, that's fine if it was a patient portion. But if it wasn't a patient portion, then where's the variance? Your allowed amount and your paid amount, the total payment amount that you receive, whether it's the patient and the insurance together, if it doesn't equal that $100, then there's a problem. It means that something happened and you need to identify. So monthly, run your variance reports, look at your CPT codes. You don't have that many CPT codes, but look by CPT code of the information that you have. How did they get paid? Is there any of my top 5 payers that did not pay them correctly based on what I was expecting to be paid? Are we getting paid the right dollar amount? Are we having denials? Are they getting downcoded? Are we having authorization issues with any payers? This is where you identify that information. You will have this as a free handout. The second page to this is just an easy way, if you're going to do an analysis, it gives you your return on investment for an analysis. I'll talk a little bit more about this a little bit later as we get to those other slides, but I just wanted to go ahead and share with you this little schedule right here I was talking about at the moment. Okay. So maximizing efficiency, making sure you take that proactive approach to reduce your administrative burden, reduce the need for rework and appeals, making sure that your payment cycle is faster. The sooner you find out the issue or you identify an issue, the less you will have to clean up later. So think about that. As soon as you catch it, start resolving it. But if it goes on for 6 months, you'll have 6 months of cleanup. But if you're doing those steps I just showed you every 2 weeks, 3 weeks, or 1 month, that's or less items that you have to clean up later. And the faster your cash will come in. So if you have the ability, or if your software has the ability to integrate any kind of automated reports for you that can do some reconciliation, that would be great. I know that there are some of the software programs that are out there now that a lot of ABA services use. They do have some good reports. They have good report packages. And sometimes you have to do what I call, you have to string 2 reports together to get the answer that you want. But that's okay if you're getting the answer. Again, you're not looking at 100 different codes like I would if I'm looking at an ambulatory surgery center and their top 100, because that's where all the meat of their money is. You're looking at a small section of codes. And if you have to look at what was paid versus what's outstanding by CPT code, then that's a little bit more manageable than going to a much larger organization. And I don't mean to say that you're not already busy, because we know that most of our ABA clinics are so busy with all the paperwork that they're already doing now. But this is a part of the process of ensuring that your organization is financially stable and successful. So just wanted to share if there was any automation that you can take advantage of, go ahead and take advantage of it. Sometimes it's just a matter of learning what your system can give you by talking to the vendor and saying, I want to do this, or I need to know this. What report can help me with it? That might be your best option. So let's get to our real world examples. So, contracted rate versus paid rate discrepancy. So a clinic has a contract rate of $50 an hour for 97153. The payer only paid $42 an hour, which left an $8 shortfall. So the way we identified that was we took the EOB and compared it to the contracted rate, similar to what I talked about before, and we ran a payment variance report. I call it a payment variance report, and basically it's a report. Some systems call it something different. It's what was paid, and they may have what was paid versus what was expected. So in your fee schedule, you may have the ability to build in your allowable rate. If your software has the ability to put in the allowable rate by that payer, by all means do that. If you don't have that, then make sure you have a spreadsheet that says, Aetna, I'm paid this much for this service. So you can take that and you can create your own payment variance report by just manually looking at it. So the resolution was to send an appeal with proof of the contracted rate. And what we did was we got the provider relations department to go back in, correct the rate in the system. And when we provided a few examples of this and the date as far back as we could, they went back and they corrected it and then they paid. So that was that example. Modifier related. So we submit claim 97155 with a modifier 59 to make sure that they understood it was a differentiated service. So the payer reduced that payment to 50% because they bundled the claim. So I don't know about your software system, but these were electronic remittance advices that came in. So it's an electronic remittance advice and it auto posts in the software system. So it auto posted with the CO45, which makes it look like, okay, this is just a normal posting process. However, when we did the payment variance report, we were able to identify, wait, hold on. That's not a normal process. That is not a normal contractual. They downcoded, they underpaid, they didn't downcode it, excuse me. They underpaid this claim. They underpaid that CPT code. So let's go back and fix that. So we had to appeal the claim to justify the use of the 59 modifier, and they reprocessed all of the claims. But if we were not doing the underpayment or the payment analysis and just allowed the system to do its job and never go back and look at it, we would have continued to have that payment, that code reduced by 50%. Eventually, it probably would have been found, but think about 50% of your revenue and you're not really understanding why, because you're looking at the large numbers, getting to this detail to understand why you're missing money. All right, this is one that happens frequently and you really don't know this. Managed care payer updates their fee schedule, but it fails to apply the new rates correctly. So they continue to pay at the old rate. We see this a lot at beginning of year and mid-year changes. So you need to look at the before and after fee schedule to check for inconsistency. We always verify their system updates. For example, we have this happen a lot with managed Medicare plans or managed Medicaid plans. So they go off of the CMS rates and the new fee schedules that come out every year. The Medicaid system may update their fee schedule, but it takes a while for the managed Medicaid system to update their schedules. So sometimes not all of the updates come through. Posted and they don't go back retroactively. So we always monitor to see, did it go back to the retroactive effective date? And is it correct? So make sure that if it's not correct, you can submit a mass adjustment request. And we've had them just cut a check. They won't reprocess the claims, but they will cut a check. In some instances, depending on how big it is, we've had some large situations that happen. But then also make sure that you continue to monitor for future corrections when they're paid. And you'll figure out, if as you're doing your payment analysis, you'll figure out who's doing this consistently, who can consistently keep their fee schedule straight and who does not. So you'll be comfortable with that soon. So this is something I was referring to about authorizations. Authorizations not found. So a clinic receives a prior authorization for 40 hours a week. However, claims for weeks 3 and 4 are denied for authorization not found. We cross-check the authorization number on the claim, and we do have it approved. The CART code was 197, pre-authorization missing or invalid. So we called, reconfirmed the authorization code, but we had to resubmit the claims with the supporting documentation. And this is where the system, the authorization system, did not cross it over to the actual claim system. So it's two different software systems that failed to communicate properly in all instances. Now, this insurance company said it was a glitch, but we had proved that glitch was happening enough to where they needed to go back and revalidate their software system and fix it. And unfortunately, it cost us time and effort to do these appeals and resubmit these claims. And no fault of ours whatsoever, but it delayed payment for the organization, which is one of the most frustrating things that there is. So unexpected downcoding. Here's another example. The 97155 was downcoded to 97153. So from $120 an hour to $50 an hour. So again, same thing as before, we reviewed our explanation of benefits and we identified that they paid it lower. So we filed a corrected claim. We took a handful, filed that corrected claim just to show proof and to get a historical validation that they were doing this incorrectly. Once we had them reprocess the claim, we went back and said, okay, with this submission, we have 340 more like it. We had to send a corrected claim. You corrected these 10. Now we need you to correct these 304. We're not resubmitting a claim. You process it correctly. So you can do things like that with a payer. You can force them to do claim reconsiderations in bulk and in groups. Now, if it's under 10 claims, they're not going to do it. They're going to resubmit it. Sometimes, if it's a one-on-one item, they will do it. It just depends on the person that you're talking to. In many instances, as unfair as that is, it is what happens. Sometimes you talk to one person and they really don't understand what you're talking about. And you have to call back. And it's just, everybody is human and we all have the same issue. We're all trying to train our staff members and move forward and get all of our team members as educated as possible. And sometimes these things happen. So don't give up. Make sure you have the knowledge and you have the ability to go and fight for what belongs to your organization. So managed care capital. Make sure that you continue to work really hard on getting all of those 30 hours in. Continue to treat continue to treat the patient. Make sure that those denials for those 10 excessive hours each week, you are going to go and you're going to request a higher cap. You're going to appeal it. Okay. And as long as you can provide medical justification, you make sure that you appeal it. Go identify in the payer's guidelines what that looks like and provide that back to them with your appeal letter. Sometimes you have to go to a peer-to-peer appeal with a payer, but it can be done and you should do it. Do not back down. Do not write those off. Do not, or I'm just going to provide it and we're just going to eat it. Do not do that. You need to push to get the right reimbursement and get the right services for the patient. Request that peer-to-peer appeal to justify and talk about why you want 10 hours each week. And you should have the knowledge to support it. And their guidelines not support it, they need to possibly change their guidelines. Let's see. And then recoupments and clawbacks. So clawbacks are when they pay for services and then months later they come back and they recoup it. So we hate clawbacks because it's money that has already been spent. You've already paid payroll, you've paid bills, you don't have this extra money laying around. So a payer recoups an overpayment due to incorrect provider credentialing in this example. So check the payer's audit notification and find out the reason behind the recoupment and then verify the enrollment status at the time of service. So if the provider was enrolled at the time of service, absolutely 100% appeal and dispute that. If you don't file a dispute or an appeal in that timely filing period, as I talked about at the beginning of this meeting, then you're going to lose out. So in many of the agreements, you have a timely filing process that if you accept a payment or if there is a issue related to a payment, then you have 60 days to dispute or disagree. It could be 45 days, it could be 30, and it could be 60. You need to understand what that looks like. It's oftentimes printed on the explanation of benefit. So if they are recouping money, they're doing a clawback. Sometimes it's printed on that particular item as well. Pay attention to that. If you exceed that time limit, you have no leg to stand on. So if it is valid, you can request a payment plan to mitigate the financial impact. I've seen payers agree to 10% of future checks. Every future check, they'll take 10% out until you've met that dollar amount, etc. Or I've seen them do something higher than that. But definitely request a payment plan from the beginning. Even if you can pay them, request a payment plan. And then request it with no interest. So that's another thing to do. Request a payment plan at no interest because it's to your benefit to do that. So the case studies that I have for you, I have 3 different ones. Blue Cross underpayment because of an incorrect fee schedule application. And these are real organizations that this happened to. So this is public information and it is well known. So they had a contracted rate of 55 and over a 6-month period, Blue Cross was only reimbursing $47 per hour. It led to a cumulative underpayment of $18,000. So how did that get identified? So a payment analysis was performed. They did a payment variance report. They compared rates versus contracted rates. Consistent $8 underpayment for all claims billed under the 97153. Contacted provider relations, and Blue Cross updated its fee schedule, but they failed to apply the new rates for all providers. So that was the issue. They did update the fee schedule, but they didn't apply it to all providers. And that's what caused the issue. So a formal dispute with the documentation was submitted. Blue Cross did acknowledge the error, and they did initiate a mass reprocessing of the affected claims. So within 90 days, the clinic received a lump sum adjustment of $18,000 for previously unpaid claims. And if they would not, it seems like $8, that could have been missed real easy, but they were doing what they needed to do. They were monitoring their payments. This facility in Florida, it was Aetna, and this was the authorization not found. So Aetna issued authorization for 40 weekly hours for 97153, and a valid pre-authorization for weeks 5 through 7 were denied. And the denial said authorization not found. And it ended up being a $12,000 issue over 3 weeks. 197, where it says pre-authorization missing or invalid, we confirmed that prior weeks 1 through 4 were paid correctly. So customer service claimed no active authorization existed. It was escalated and to the provider relations team. And then we found out that Aetna's claim processing system failed to link the authorization to the existing approved request in the claim system. So clinic resubmitted with the original authorization approval letter and the call log on a sample of them, and then manually reprocessed and approved the claims within 45 days and the $12,000 in denied claims. And then the last example is United did downcoding, which led payment. And this one is one that I highly recommend everybody pay attention to. This is a common scenario, not just with United Healthcare. So I highly recommend that this is something everybody pays attention to. So 97155, downcoded to 97153. It was a 58% revenue loss to the organization. So $25,000 due to improper downcoding. So The thing to look at right here is if you look at item number 2, the EOB said claims processed under appropriate service level per United Healthcare guidelines. A lot of times billing people don't know what to say or do with that unless they're experienced in evaluating that process and fighting for those. So sometimes when they see that, they're like, that's how they process it. That's what the agreement says, etc. This was not denied. That's the point. The claim was paid, but it was reduced. So it wasn't a denial code. It was a payment code. And the payment code just says it was processed under the appropriate service level per United Healthcare guidelines. So unless you run your actual and expected reimbursement report, like I've said all along, you won't know that difference. But thankfully that was evaluated. United Healthcare did acknowledge that it was a claim processing error where services were incorrectly processed under the technician level. And they did admit that this was done by their algorithm that misinterpreted 97155 as a duplicate service that triggered automatic downcoding. So that is one thing you definitely are going to be seeing issues with. As I said, a lot of organizations are implementing AI tools, and they're learning through this process, just as every other organization in the world is learning how to use AI tools and machine learning tools. It is a process. It's a tool, and there are going to be errors. So we have to be very vigilant and evaluate all of the information to protect us, because nobody's going to protect you like you're going to protect you. That's something that we all should live by. Nobody's going to take care of you like you take care of you. So the resolution process there was, we did that sampling of corrected claims just to prove that those were done incorrect. Made sure that we had that information with us. We sent a formal claims review for them to correct their system. They assigned our escalation rep to work with the clinic directly. And after that review, they approved the full reimbursement for the downcoded claims, and they issued $25,000. They also updated processing rule for the clinic to prevent the future automatic downcoding as well. So that helped other organizations as well. So some key takeaways on these case studies. For Blue Cross, misapplications are common. Always verify your rates. For Aetna, the authorization-related denials, it does frequently occur. And it doesn't matter which Aetna service center in the U.S., because I've worked many of them. Make sure you have your documentation handy and ready, because those errors do seem, especially in the ABA world. I've seen that, and I've seen it in a couple of other subspecialty groups. So make sure that you are taking care of that. Automated downcoding is common for 97155. So make sure that you're regularly checking those EOBs for that downcoding to 5.3. That escalation to UHC team on downcoding, there is a systemic thing. Please understand that they are putting in a lot of automation, as are a lot of other software systems. I think that they are leading the pack on system automation. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying it is what is going on in the world, in all industries. So we have to embrace it and understand that that is something that we need to be diligently looking at. So make sure that we've always submitted clear documentation and maintain detailed payer contract records, so that if we have to dispute incorrect reimbursements, we can do that effectively. And mass claim processing requests can work for you. So if you identify an issue and it's a lot of claims, make them do the hard work. Make the payers do the hard work. You have to do all of that hard work. You don't have to do all of the heavy lifting. You do have to prove that it is their error and not your organization's error, but you don't have to do all that heavy lifting all the time. Make sure that you just get what the claims, the provider representative for your organization, and work with them on it. We went over this a little bit earlier. So I'm going to bring this document back up really quick. So on that issue for United Healthcare. So this is the return on investment for that underpayment. So this shows you a calculation. So we had 100 claims affected, $25,000. So the average underpayment per claim, $250. You can put any number in here. The formulas are set up for you. So time spent on payment analysis was 10. Time spent on the appeals, 15. Average staff rate. Guys, I put in $35 here. Your bill can be paid $14, but you have to add in your insurance, your information. And then you really need to think, did I have to involve my provider? Did we have to write an appeal letter? What else did we have to do? So make that number what works for your organization. I just threw $35 in there because this is just a sample for you to use, and you can change these numbers accordingly. So here's the staff cost. This is the revenue recovery. So net revenue gain right here. So it's this number minus this. And then the breakdown, this just gives you the step, the formula, and the value. So I hope that is helpful for you. There's one other document that I am sharing, and this is an appeal letter that you can take and make for yourself, make it your own for your organization. So if you feel that an organization has underpaid you due to downcoding, specifically these codes, or you can change the codes, then this is a good sample appeal letter for you to write or to use. So I've sent this over so you can make sure that you just put in the right things for your organization, attach your supporting documentation, sign off on, and send it back. Now, one of the things I'm going to tell you here, in 10 days, and take them time to review it all. I would say 20 days. I would say 15 days, but you have to be reasonable on your request. Okay? Truly be reasonable on your request. And then the other thing is a lot of organizations do copy the patient or the patient's family. You would need to identify whether or not you want to do that, because the thing that you don't want to do is you don't want to upset the patient's family unless you have to. There's a stress level on the families at this point. Work it out with the insurance company first, and then if you have to, coordinate something with the family member to help support your requests for appeals and things like that, then do it. But you would be sending a lot of these letters, and it would be a very stressful situation. So just think through that. I hope that this is helpful. I hope that the information that I've shared for you has been helpful. And we have just a few minutes for any question that anybody might have.
Yeah, Stacy, I love that you shared. Don't get the family involved until absolutely necessary. That they definitely don't need that stress, but that's definitely good advice. I had a question about, we work with a lot of the startup ABA therapy companies, and we're on the phone with about 3 BCBAs every day that are starting up a new company, and they're working on figuring out what things are going to look like business-wise, money-wise, building out what their structure is going to be. And I wanted to see if you could give some advice on, figuring out and I always tell them, like, figure out what your lowest reimbursement rate. Now, my weakness is I don't know how to tell them to do that, but we want to figure out what the lowest reimbursement rate is so we can calculate what our hourly income is going to be based on that, and then put that up against your highest RBT pay. And then you have an idea what your minimum hourly profit is going to be. Right. And then we can start lining that up against your fixed monthly costs, figure out what the monthly part-time minimums and things like that are. My question for you, because I know you're in the area of the billing and the reimbursements and the payers, how do you find out exactly what payers are paying for different codes in the area?
Yeah. So a lot of times I identify who are the target payers that they want to have. So most of the time it's going to be Blue Cross, Aetna, Cigna, United Healthcare, and somebody else. It definitely, I don't know if they want to take Medicaid, not. It just depends. Who are those payers? And then take the list and go online. If they publish their fee schedule, you can easily look it up through their fee schedule lookup. If not, call them and say, I've got 5 codes. I need you to tell me what the reimbursement is. And they will tell you. It's easy information to find. Sometimes a payer will say, are you a contracted provider, non-contracted provider? Just say, I'm a non-contracted provider, because then they're going to get a really long discussion about rates, et cetera, et cetera. And you have to say, I am a non-contracted provider today, so it would be billed as non-contracted. So that will give you the lowest denominator, so to speak, of what the code would be. And the other thing is working with somebody else in that state. So, they won't be your competition. Network through Facebook groups like this and saying, hey, I'm looking to see if anybody would share in the state what your reimbursement rates are. People will share. People will be gracious enough to help you as long as you're in direct competition.
Yeah, and that's great advice too. And always go back to the group and ask those questions, because you want to get the answers from your peers.
Right.
But yeah, definitely being able to do the legwork and call the insurance company and get it directly from the horse's mouth and make sure that you're getting good information. Because you're building your business plan based on this. Like, you're deciding
That's
when
right.
you're going to quit your full-time job. You're deciding how much money in your current savings account you can spend to get the business started up versus how much you're going to need to keep. So it's important definitely to get precise information on there and make sure you're planning on the worst case scenario at all times. So
You're right.
Stacy, as
Absolutely.
always, we appreciate your expertise. Thank you for
You're
all
so
the
welcome.
great info. And I'm sure we'll see you on the next one, but thank you very much. Enjoy Myrtle Beach.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
You're already doing the work, investing your time, your energy, and your vision. So let's make it count. Build something that works without breaking you. The EBCBA Blueprint is the way. Get started for free with our foundation course.